I'm Phil Schneider, the co-founder and co-director of Schneider's Speech Pathology. And I am a person who is a Parkinson's challenger. I'm your host for the evening. While the pandemic encourages isolation and separation, PWP encourages emotional connection. PWP is a nonprofit organization, and we are dedicated to creating awareness, education, social togetherness, and wellness strategies for people with Parkinson's. We are determined to form bridges between Parkinson's community and the world at large, breaking down barriers of isolation and helplessness. Our founder and director is Susan Lust, and it is her vision, her dedication, her drive, and hard work that make all of this possible. Susan, thank you. This evening's webinar focuses on telemedicine, and we have two parts to our evening program. The first is a presentation by Dr. Isaacson, sponsored by US World Meds, represented today by Allison Miller and Bill Fitzsimmons. Something just changed on my screen. My computer is, I got it back. We thank US World Meds for bringing this program to us and helping to make it possible. The second part of our program is a simulated telemedicine office visit with Dr. Isaacson and Alex Tresser in the role of patient. Our other sponsors today include Accorda, represented today by Elizabeth Elkins, Lundbeck, represented by Todd Folks and Sharice Dunn, Acadia, represented by Francesca Roth, and Neon Oladipo. Acadia has a disclaimer that they're not responsible for the contents of tonight's program. Check out their websites that we have here and on our website so that you can find out about the work that these organizations are doing to help find better solutions for Parkinson's. We appreciate their sponsorship, and without their help, none of this would be possible. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Stuart Isaacson. He is the director of the Parkinson's Disorders and Movement Disorders Center of Boca Raton, Florida. And for more than 25 years, Dr. Isaacson has dedicated himself to the clinical care of people with Parkinson's. And he has also been actively involved extensively in research to find new and better answers for treatment. We're privileged to have you, Dr. Isaacson. The name of the talk is Telemedicine, What We Need to Know. And while he's making his presentation, if you have questions, please push the chat button at the lower middle of your screen and add your questions to the chat, and we'll try and address them after his talk. Dr. Isaacson, take it away.
Thanks, Phil. I'm glad to join you tonight and to talk about this two-pronged program that Susan put together today. First, we'll see a presentation that we put together to try to explain telemedicine and what that might be. And then once that program is over, for those who remain, we'll have a second part of the program where we actually put it into motion and joined by a special guest and to see how a telemedicine visit might actually work. I'm going to share my screen here so I can show you these slides that we had put together, and let's see how that works. There we go. So this is a presentation that under the with the help of US World Meds, a company now owned by Supernus that manufactures several Parkinson's disease medications, assisted us to put together, myself and Professor Rajesh Power and Kelly Lyons out of the University of Kansas, to try to explain during this COVID time, what is telemedicine and how can people with Parkinson's disease remain active and not put their Parkinson's disease on hold, but really try to engage and see their doctors and nurses in regular visits, albeit not in person perhaps, but by video or by telephone, which remarkably are now covered under most insurance, all insurance plans, including Medicare. We put this together, and we've worked with a lot of these different companies. So we'll talk a little bit about briefly at the beginning now here, what is telemedicine? How would you connect for a telemedicine appointment? How do you prepare in advance, most importantly, to make sure all the information and all the symptoms you might be experiencing can be discussed at a telemedicine visit, sharing your symptoms, participating in the examination, and then really being a part of the decision-making process so you can make sure that your answers are gotten. Telemedicine is a regular appointment. There's nothing to think about in any different way. It's a routine type of telemedicine visit that we really think about in doing just as we do other visits. And no one should be afraid of this. This is really something that I think we can do very, very routinely. It allows you to, with video, talk face-to-face with doctors and nurses, and by phone to at least get in touch and express this. So often what we'll do is we'll call a day or two before and let you know about what the telemedicine appointment might be, when we're going to call you and when we're going to talk to you, and try to find out if we're going to email you information or text you information or call with information on how to connect. And when you do connect, this is what you'll see. You'll see someone like me on the screen, and you'll be small in that little thing on the bottom, whereas I'll see you on the big screen, perhaps whether it's a phone or a computer, and whoops. And we can do this in a number of ways. Some doctors' offices use an app that you download. Some send you a link that you click on the phone or on a computer, and some use a phone or even a FaceTime or a Skype. There's many different ways to do it, and they all sort of work fine. Some people like to sit in front of a computer or in front of their phone to sit on a place where they can prop up the phone. Some people use an iPad or other type of tablet. All these work very well, and the trick is to think about what you're going to use, where you're going to sit, and make sure it's a place where you have adequate lighting, where you're able to sit comfortably, where you can stand up perhaps and take some steps away from the camera so we can evaluate how you tap your fingers and how you walk and such. Or maybe someone can help you and sit with you, contribute, a family member, a spouse, a caregiver, some of the symptoms, and hold the camera up with the phone and watch how you walk. Remember, none of this has to be perfect. We do the best we can in these times, but they can be done routinely, these telemedicine appointments, really from anywhere. Prior to the appointment, you want to do what you do for any regular visit, or at least what you should do for any regular visit. Make a list of the problems you're having. Maybe number them in priority order to make sure they're covered. Make sure you have your medications up to date and written down, or have the bottles next to you so you can read the medication doses and the types of medicines. Note anything that's different, any motor symptoms, any non-motor symptoms you're having, and very importantly, how you respond to each dose of medication. It's important to remember that Parkinson's is not only about movement problems, but also about non-motor symptoms. Things like memory, hallucinations, mood, depressed mood, anxiety, loss of interest, lightheadedness when you stand up, trouble sleeping at night or falling asleep during the day, vivid dreams that are acted out, lack of energy or fatigue. All these are part of Parkinson's, we now know, and important symptoms to cover. But it's also important to think about the motor symptoms. If you take levodopa, to note the times you usually take it, both the times that you want to take them and the times you actually do take it. You want to also write down when you wake up in the morning, how are you feeling? How long does it take for the first dose to work? How well does it work? How long does it last? What happens when it wears off? What symptoms do you have when it first begins to wear off? And what symptoms continue to occur until you take your next dose and it begins to work? These off episodes that occur when the benefit of a dose of medicine is lost and the symptoms come back. How long do they last and when do they occur? Because we have lots of new medications and old medications that we can use, probably more than 20 nowadays, to try to make your good on effective medication more consistent. You also want to note if you're having things like dyskinesia or other side effects of having too much medicine that can occur, like sleepiness or confusion. Then when we do the examination, we can do this pretty simply, probably not as well as in person, but we can do this by asking you to hold your hand up and tap the fingers, and then the other hand. You might have to move back into the camera. Here you can see my hands are outside the camera. I can move them closer together, or I can move back more away from the camera and we can see more. You can get up and walk as well. But all these types of examinations can be used and done by video here. If you have a place in your home where you can keep the camera on the iPad or the computer or a phone that we can see you walk, or someone can hold the phone and watch you walk, that is great, because then we can really evaluate the walking and see how it's doing. And then most importantly, be prepared to discuss the symptoms you have, what you think you want to try to improve, whether the symptom is from Parkinson's or a side effect of medication, how the medications are working, and really engage. This is a good time where you can be sitting in the comfort of your home with your loved ones and your caregivers, and really discuss with your doctors and nurses, how can you best address your Parkinson's problems? This is not a time to ignore Parkinson's. This is actually, if there's a silver lining to COVID, a time to try to make your symptoms better. Now's a great time when you're isolated at home to try to adjust the medicines or try new medicines to try to treat some of these symptoms. Some of these symptoms are worse because of the isolation and the quarantining. So really try to be active in this decision making and try to understand, and then make sure you get a list of how to take the medications. Make sure the medications are refilled. Make sure if you're getting therapy prescriptions, whether it's in virtual therapy or they're coming to the home or you're going somewhere now, make sure you get all your prescriptions, because sometimes the phone systems are not ideal during this time where some people are working from home. This is a little checklist to try to just remember to be prepared. Think about what you're going to use, how you're going to connect. Spend some time beforehand getting ready to connect, where you're going to sit, write down your list of symptoms, know where you're going to be able to stand and walk if you're able to, and then be prepared to not only talk about the problems that you have, but what you're going to do about it. Take action today. Don't ignore your Parkinson's during this time. And then don't forget to schedule your next appointment, whether that appointment will be telemedicine as well, or whether it'll be an appointment in person. Other events might dictate. And a lot of times now, because of telemedicine, rather than telling you to change your medicine and call if there's a problem, we'll see you in 3 or 4 months, we're now able to say, hey, try it for a week or two and let's do a telemedicine visit again and see how it's working. So I think we may be able to provide even closer and better care during this time in some regards. So that's really the presentation, brief, but I think it's important to recognize that with all that's available nowadays, the technology and the insurance and Medicare companies are being able to provide for this, now is not a time to ignore Parkinson's symptoms, whether they're motor or non-motor, but really to try to get involved with telemedicine and get these symptoms, if you can't make it to a doctor's office, addressed by video or even telephone nowadays. So I'm happy to answer any questions now before we move on to the next part.
All right, what do we do now?
Let's see, I don't see any questions coming in.
Dr. Isaacson,
Yes.
can you hear me? I guess you hear me. Can you think of any advantages of seeing people through in telemedicine that you've experienced? There might be some things that happen better, smoother, more efficiently, or disadvantages comparing in-office visits to visits together through media.
I think one of the big advantages that I've seen with telemedicine is really twofold. One is we have more time to talk about family, grandchildren, exercise, other modalities, therapies, and the medications and the symptoms. We're not always so rushed as we sometimes can be in the office. So we have a little bit more time at a visit to really take the time. And also, I get to see where you live and how you function and how you walk at home. And some of that as well can be helpful in knowing how to maybe adjust the medications best. And then importantly, because of the telemedicine, the way it's being covered now, we're very able now to be able to see you in a week or two again and see the effect of the medicine and maybe tinker and make another effect of the medication and then see you in a week or two again. So I think all of those can be very helpful in trying to give better care and really take care of symptoms that maybe have been put off. You know, we don't like to change medicine when you're about to take a trip, when you're going on vacation, when life events are coming up. We often put off changing medicine. So we shouldn't put off changing medicine now that people are stuck at home. Now's a great time to try to make things better and to try to improve things.
Thank you. Very helpful. Are there any thoughts that you might have on how people, because now individuals seeking medical care and seeking consultation with physicians have a much wider range of people they can talk to. Any guidelines that you would suggest people watch for in choosing who their medical partner is going to be?
Well, it's true, especially with telemedicine. You could really have a doctor in any state. But don't just go and meet someone and go make changes without thinking about it. Make sure the doctor who's seeing you locally, if they're going to be involved, can still be able to be involved in your care, to talk about some of the different options that are available. We have so many different medications nowadays and so many different symptoms. And some of these symptoms have unfortunately gotten worse with quarantining and isolation. Things like anxiety, mood and hallucinations, low blood pressure from dehydration. All these things might actually get worse with quarantining, as the motor symptoms might. So it's really a time to take hold of Parkinson's, really take a good inventory and ensure that you're getting the proper care for all these symptoms now, and things aren't being put off for another time. There really is no other time than now, and now's a great time to act to treat all these symptoms of Parkinson's, especially considering all the new medicines that we have available for Parkinson's. Geez, we've had 2 medicines approved just in the COVID in the past month or 2. That'll be available in the next 3 or 6 months. So I think it's a great time to really take stock and try to get some of the symptoms addressed.
Dr. Isaacson, thanks a lot. Gave us a great overview. And I think one of the takeaways for me that I'd like to just reiterate is that we, as the people who are coming to you as the expert, we're looking for a collaborative relationship, and we should come in with a sense of responsibility to prepare for the visit by keeping some notes about what's going on, what's changing, what we're doing to respond to our challenges and how that's going, and what our questions are. So I think if we lay that out and we provide that for you, then we're both going to get more out of the visit. I really appreciate your intro, and we're going to move now into let's see what it really looks like. So we're going to invite Alex Tresser to join you. Alex is the founder of pdonthemove.org.
.com.
Ah, thank you, Alex.
My pleasure.
Founder of pdonthemove.com. If you don't find it where I said it, find it at .com. Alex is an accomplished world-class ballet and Broadway dancer who has used his own knowledge of health and exercise and dance to combat his own Parkinson's challenges. And he's made his approach to helping himself freely accessible to all of us on his website, pdonthemove.com. I personally encourage all of us to spend time with Alex on his website. These videos are fantastic. And for me personally, they're not only physically energizing, but they're emotionally uplifting. So welcome, Alex, and the doctor is in. Take it away, Dr. Isaacson and Alex.
Well,
And
thank
again,
you very
if have,
much.
One more, just quickie. If you have a question while you're listening to this session, please put it on the chat. Thank you.
Hello, doctor.
Hi, so we thought we would do this make-believe visit so you can see what telemedicine might be like. So bear with us and let's see how this works out. So Alex, thanks for, you had any trouble getting on? The office called you yesterday and made sure you were able to connect, and you got all those 100 emails from Susan in our office to help you connect?
Yes, I've got them all.
Great.
Thank you.
So
Thank
how
you
you
for
been
seeing
doing?
me so quickly.
Well, it's one of the benefits of COVID is we have telemedicine where we could actually see you the next day and not make you wait weeks.
Yes.
How's your Parkinson's been?
Well, it's progressing as an inevitability kind of this disease, but because of so much information, as you've pointed out, some of it is very useful, some of it is maybe questionable. You just have to either find out for sure who you're dealing with, because there are tremendous offers on the internet, anything from stem cell therapies to all sorts of brain stimulation therapies and all things like that. But I'm sure that some of it is probably true and some of it is probably not. So you have to be very careful. Having computer at your disposal is fantastic, but I think having a doctor is the best.
Yeah, but don't forget, a lot of the things you read may be true, but most don't apply to you. So you do have to filter it out.
Right.
How are your medicines working? How do you take your levodopa now?
Well, over the years, I kind of had to figure out on my own a little bit because there wasn't much information available when I got diagnosed. And only in terms of how much dopamine do you really need? How does it interact with food? That knowledge kind of came later when I was keeping my journal and trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. So you have to spend more time doing some of the work to keep Parkinson's at bay. I had to quit some medications, not on the assistance of a doctor necessarily, just because I felt that that medication made me worse in certain aspects. So I now reduced to 2 medications, and they seem to work well together. And I take them first thing in the morning with some water, because it seems like the absorption rate is much greater when you don't have a full stomach.
How are you when you wake up? Do you have symptoms when you wake up?
Yes and no, but I think the symptoms kind of show up gradually in the morning. So if you take your medication in time, you might not even go through the period of withdrawal or the off period, as we like to refer to it. Doctors like to refer to it that way. So again, it's if you're disciplined and you know your body, when to eat, when to take medications, you should do well.
Great.
I do well.
Yeah. Do you have symptoms that improve when you take your first medications in the morning?
Yeah, all of them.
Do you have tremor that improves or slowness? Or
Absolutely. Absolutely.
do those symptoms come back after a few hours?
They used to, but now because I've been in this for so long, well, I don't know if it's so long, but it's almost 15 years since I noticed something wrong. If you time it right and your diet is appropriate for this disease, and I say that because some things really work well for Parkinson's food-wise, and some things don't. So if you're taking care of your dietary needs and you pay attention, you may reduce your symptoms to the point where you don't have severe off periods where you really require a lot of help to get around.
What do you do when you have a severe off period? Is there a certain strategy of medications you use, or?
I try not to boost the medication, but I maybe take a little bit more water because dehydration is a big part of it. People who don't drink enough water probably do worse with Parkinson's medications. So I try to incorporate a little more liquid into my diet and see if I, had some ice cream in the middle of the night by accident. Sugar is not a good thing for Parkinson's, that's for sure.
How about non-motor symptoms? Do you have any trouble with your memory or your mood, hallucinations or dreams?
I did when I was taking dopamine agonists, because I'm in profession where you have to do so many things simultaneously. I'm a ballet master and choreographer where you have to count, you have to keep an eye on the tempos, you have to direct the dancers, and you have to make sure that you remember the steps that you gave them. It's a pretty complex machinery, dancing. So what I was noticing is that all of a sudden I can't remember literally 8 counts of steps to music or something that I gave him. And I thought, oh my God, not only do I have Parkinson's, I'm probably in beginning stages of Alzheimer's. But that was not the case. When I stopped taking certain medications, my memory was fine in a couple of weeks. I felt better. And I kind of weighed it against Parkinson's symptoms versus memory loss. And I opted to keep my memory and maybe work on my Parkinson's some other way rather than take these medications.
Sure, it's a good point. We have so many new medicines for Parkinson's. We often, if you're having a side effect with one type of medicine, we have other types that we can use to try to enhance.
Right, right.
How about lightheadedness? You say you stay hydrated. You ever stand up quickly and feel lightheaded?
Not really. But again, I'm the type of person that is doing so many things throughout the day to keep myself as symptom-free as possible, that my blood pressure, whenever I get checked by a physician, is normal. I haven't experienced any lightheadedness, really.
How about constipation?
That's something that came up or came down, however you want to put it. Something that crept up. Yes, again, with proper hydration and better nutrition, that can be avoided. When it does happen, all of a sudden you notice that you're having difficulties, and of course you panic because you don't attribute it to Parkinson's necessarily. You just think, I'm just old and nothing's moving anymore. Or you're saying your last movement. So yeah, I revert to better diet, more vegetables, less meat, and that seems to help quite a bit. But again, there are things available. Some of them are natural, some of them are medicines, and I think everyone should foremost speak to a doctor, nutritionist maybe, or maybe a doctor will recommend a nutritionist or have some guidelines that may help. But that seems to work best. It's just to keeping your body at an optimum shape as far as diet and when to take the medications, and of course communicate with the doctor as much as possible.
Sure. So during this time of quarantining, it's difficult to get out to some people. How are you dealing with exercise? Are you able to exercise? Are you keeping that up? It's so important. Huh?
Well, that's amazing. That's a great question. And you know what? A doctor that diagnosed me never, and he was a wonderful doctor. I'm sure I never say anything bad about doctors. I wasn't given any information at the time as to what to do, exercise or not to exercise, literally nothing. He was very sad that I have Parkinson's, and he was the one who could diagnose me. But exercise is something we can do in literally 4 foot of space, especially if you live in a communal apartment like I used to in the Soviet Union. We didn't have any more space to exercise. And the key is to be active. It could be literally anything. If you do simple squats, if you do leg raises, they require no space at all. The key is, instead of sitting watching TV, get up and do your exercises while watching TV. And you don't need any huge amount of space, or you're so afraid of catching the pandemic virus that's going around that you don't want to go outside. It's not an excuse. You can exercise all day in your house, in your apartment, if you have a little walkway, if you have stairs, if you have a tall building. Our life is about exercise. We just have to do it.
Sure. How about therapies? Have you had physical or speech or occupational therapy? And some people are getting this now. People come to the home, and others are getting it virtually, just like this on a screen.
I think some people obviously do need those therapies. Some people literally forget how to speak with a degree of enunciation that's easily understood. Some people lose their vocal ability altogether, and any therapy that could help you should be definitely tried and addressed, and hopefully everybody will find help, because again, it's available, it's there. We just need to ask the right questions and not go to the doctor and pretend like there's nothing going on. I'm 100%, it's perfect. Well, what we probably do is take a heavy dose of medication, because after all, I'm going to a doctor, I'm going to perform. I can't just wobble around the office,
With the news as it is, any anxiety or trouble sleeping during this period?
Trouble sleeping. Yeah, it's probably the constipation and trouble sleeping. They kind of go together with Parkinson's
Sure.
because you may not have any of those experiences prior, but all of a sudden with Parkinson's, they creep up and you don't necessarily attribute it to Parkinson's, but the fact is that it is Parkinson's. It's one of those hidden gems of Parkinson's, that it's not the tremors, it's not the dyskinesia or other things. It's those internal things like constipation, like difficulty communicating, or not having the ability to write normally. So there's lots of stuff going on.
Are there times of the day when you can write better than other times of the day?
Usually when but I would say an hour and a half after taking medications, your coordination kind of at its peak. It's almost normal.
How long
And
does
when
that last for?
Hmm?
How long does that normal last for?
Probably a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours for sure, and then it begins to decline as the amount of dopamine is depleted again. So we go through these peaks and valleys, but you can with great degree of discipline keep it at a more even level where your writing is fine. And what I noticed is your creativity is better because I mean, I'm in a very creative field, you know, when you choreograph or teach class. So I notice when my medications and my diet is working, I don't feel that different from when I didn't have Parkinson's.
Right.
And I love to I cherish those hours, you know, and I would like to extend them as long as possible. So again, it's discipline, it's what you eat, it's what you drink, it's how much you exercise. And you have to become kind of like a Superman.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me take a look at you and examine you.
Yes. I won't be able to walk because it's a little difficult here right now.
Okay,
But
we do the best we can. I can see you pretty
yeah,
here. So let me see. Can you hold your arms up here in front of you?
yes. Let me just move the camera back a little bit.
Just hold your hands up like this. Good. Now turn them over. Back and forth. Do that quickly. Good. Now just with the right hand, I want you to tap the two fingers like this. Open them really wide and tap them quickly. And the other hand?
I feel like a cartoon character.
Good. Now just the right hand, open and close the fist. Great.
Well, I think I could choreograph a new dance that starts like that.
And the other hand. Good. Okay, you put your hands down. Say today is a sunny day.
Today is a sunny day.
Good, good. Now I can hear it. Just tap your right foot up and down on the floor. Good. And the other one? Okay. Very good. Very good. Very good. Let me ask you a couple of questions for your memory and your thinking here. How much is 96 and 17?
96 and 17, 112.
Good. Right.
You said quickly.
Tell me the months of the year in order.
Sorry?
Tell me the months of the year in order. But
January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, Revolution Day, December, and we're back to January.
and now for your moment of fame, let's see if you can do that backwards. Start with December and work backwards.
December, November, October, September, August, July, June, May, April, March, February, January.
Great. Great. Are you able to stand up?
Yeah, if I move the chair, I really don't have much room here, but I apologize.
Good. Now hold your hands up in front of you again. And now turn them.
Wait, hold on.
Yep. There you go. Now turn them back and forth again like this.
We will have a wireless world at some point.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, you can take a seat and pull the chair back and do a little dance for us. There you go. So hopefully everyone can see we can do a great deal of the examination, at least when we do in Parkinson's here, and really get to understand how the medications may be working. So tell me, when did you take your last dose of levodopa?
Around 4 o'clock.
Do you feel it's working now?
Yeah, I have no idea what time it is, but oh, it's 9:35, 7:35.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is working.
Good. Is
I
this
will take
typical
my.
that it will work this well after 3.5 hours?
Yeah, the dose that I'm taking seems to work. I mean, I'm trying to take less medication, but because I time it with food and, and stuff like that, and what I eat, not too many heavy proteins and things like that.
Okay. Any other symptoms that you're having?
Not really, no.
Anything else you'd like to bring out or talk about at this visit?
Well, I encourage everyone to ask more questions in your initial visit because the neurologist will probably have to see you a couple of times before the definitive diagnosis is given, because you want to rule out a host of other things that could, show up as Parkinson's symptoms, and it's not Parkinson's. And ask what is the strategy going forward once you do get diagnosed. It's very important not to just be sad and leave the office and hope for a phone call. Just ask what is that I can do right now besides the medications, because some people probably do not need medication right away. How they can improve their diet, what exercises to do, taking a dance lesson or some other class. It's a great idea to be out and socialize, but people need more personalized approach. And I think actually with telemedicine, that approach is now more possible than having to physically go to a doctor, and maybe the doctor is so busy that you can't get an appointment. I mean, that has happened many times to a lot of people. So this is an advantage in a period of a great disadvantage. So
yeah, I think it's a good point. So, well, I think there's a couple of things I think about your Parkinson's. Clearly you continue to have a very slow and very mild form of Parkinson's. And when dopamine is replaced well, you seem to have few symptoms of motor symptoms. I think it's important to continue to recognize, though, that the non-motor symptoms are also due to Parkinson's, and we should continue to try to address things like constipation and insomnia. We have so many medications nowadays. You mentioned the levodopa. We have the short-acting, and we have a longer extended-release formulation. We have the dopamine agonist. You mentioned the Mirapex. We have other ones like ropinirole and the rotigotine patch. We have medicines that prevent the breakdown of dopamine in the brain, the MAOB inhibitors like razagiline and selegiline and safinamide. And we have medications that prevent the breakdown of dopamine outside the brain and make it stay in the bloodstream. Medicine called entacapone or Comtan, and a new one that was approved this past month called apicapone or Ongentis that will be available later this year. We have some new medicines that don't work for all the time, but work when the medicine's not working. When you're in an off episode, we have medicines that recognize how slow the gut is in Parkinson's. In fact, some research suggests Parkinson's begins in the gut and then later gets to other parts of the nervous system and then the brain. And we know that much like the gut is slow when constipation occurs, also the stomach and esophagus is slow, and pills you swallow have to get down the esophagus and get into the stomach, but they're not absorbed in the stomach. They have to get out of the stomach and then get into the intestine where they're rapidly absorbed, although protein can sometimes impair them from being absorbed so quickly. But the stomach is slow to empty in Parkinson's for many people. And we've worked hard in our research programs to develop medicines that work without swallowing. We have a new medicine that's available that you can inhale levodopa and through the mouth. And we have a medicine that was just approved and will be available in a couple of weeks that goes under the tongue and gets absorbed. And that's a newer version of an older medicine we've had for 15 years that you can take a little injection pen that works in 5 or 10 or 20 minutes to make the symptoms better. All these work more rapidly and more reliably because they bypass the slow gut by coming in these other ways. And then we've worked on other chemicals that are not dopamine or dopamine modulating medicines. We have a medicine that they've had in Japan for about 5 years that's available in this country in the past year that doesn't work on dopamine, but works on adenosine, a different chemical that helps to remove the brake and allow people to move more freely. And then, of course, we have a medicine that works on glutamate that helps reduce dyskinesia in Parkinson's. That's been approved. That's a once-a-day medication at night. We have a medication that works on serotonin that's been approved for people who have Parkinson's psychosis with hallucinations. And we have a medicine that's been approved that works on noradrenaline and norepinephrine in Parkinson's for people who stand up and the blood pressure falls and they feel lightheaded. So we made a lot of progress in the past 6 or 7 years with all these new medicines that work not only on dopamine, not only swallowed by mouth, but work in other ways and in other chemicals. So if you're finding times of the day and you're waiting for your first dose to work in the morning, or you get the great on effect, but it doesn't last consistently, some of these medicines might be useful, and we can talk more about them over time, and you can talk with your own doctors as well. But we have so many different options. In research programs, we're working on pumps that you can wear, subcutaneous pumps that give different levodopa and other medications that keep things very even. And of course, down the road, some people think about surgery, the deep brain surgery, or the surgery in the stomach that gives levodopa evenly straight into the intestine where it's absorbed. So we've really learned that Parkinson's, as it progresses over the decades, most people can stay with a pretty good consistent on if they make use of some of these newer medications to extend the on and to use ways to turn on more rapidly and more reliably, and be aware of some of the new medicines that are being looked at in research programs. There's probably about 50 or 60 medicines in trials in the US alone. And we're involved down in Boca, probably in about 30 different new medicine trials, things to try to slow down the progression, medicines directed at genes, some genes that are common, for instance, the LRRK2 gene or the GBA gene that's common in Ashkenazi Jews, trying to address that, the alpha-synuclein protein, and new medicines that may help the Cinemet last longer or work better. So much research going on to really stay abreast in meetings like this with the Parkinson's Wellness Project, Michael Fox website, all these different things to really stay ahead of the curve and be aware of all the new things that are happening. And not to forget that even simple solutions, hydration, so important, exercise, so important. If constipation persists, things like the osmotic laxative, Miralax over the counter, a stool softener sometimes combined with that, Docusate. Some people use the Rancho Mirage cocktail of bran, applesauce, and prune juice, and that can be quite helpful for constipation. If you can't sleep at night, Chinese food, a little brandy, sometimes meditation, counting sheep. Some of these may be better than sleeping pills that can lead to dopiness and falls.
Before we get too far away from the consult, this is amazing because so many people ask questions about what are different things that can be done for different things. So I'm checking all these questions coming in. You've answered a ton of them, but people would have to have an amazing mind to absorb that. But clearly there's a lot to be done from your end. There's a lot that you know and that you can use. Yeah. I have a question for you, Dr. Isaacson, and for Alex. How did this feel to you, this consult together, as compared to your general office experiences? And Alex, on your end, how did it feel to you as compared? I assume that you've had many opportunities to speak in the office of a doctor appointment.
Well, I just think it shortens the distance between a patient and a doctor. It means that I can reach the doctor probably sooner than if I were to call the office and make an appointment. So it's a great comfort already there. And the fact that we can cover more ground, so to speak, again, because we're saving so much time in travel that the doctor could probably see more patients, spend more time with the patient. And just the things that the doctor mentioned today about all these medications, they're on the verge of being approved. I mean, that's a great thing to hear. It gives you hope. It gives you better understanding as to what the scientists are working on. So I really think it's fantastic.
Dr. Isaacson, what was your experience?
Well, I think it's very important because, sometimes it's frustrating for us to spend all this time and learn about the problems you're having and try to explain everything we know about Parkinson's in a short visit, and try to give you advice on how to adjust medications and think about new medications. We encourage you to exercise and stay hydrated and eat fruit and vegetables and stay involved and all these things. And then we don't see you again for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah,
So much nicer to be able to say, hey, you know what? Let's set this up in a week or two. Let's touch base at a shorter visit and see how you're doing, and really try to fine tune this over a couple of visits, and then maybe not see you for 3 months.
I have this
about it.
I'm sorry to jump in, but
Yeah.
watching this and having experienced several in-office visits and a few through media, I'm impressed with how well this goes. And that there's actually, there seems like there's no barrier, and there are more advantages than there are disadvantages. So it's like one of those interesting things that's come out of a time of crisis that could be a benefit. Gives us access to more different physicians, finding the one we want, and more of the convenience and the lack of travel. So this was very impressive, and I think it was one thing to talk about. It's another thing to watch the dance.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that very much. There was a specific question about Alex. Someone wanted to ask which agonist you stopped taking.
I was given at some point, which was a while ago now, prescription to ropinirole. Ropinirole. So in a few weeks, after initial couple of weeks where you really feel awful, you just, out of nowhere, you're just completely dyskinetic. You can't move your feet. That was my experience. I found myself caught up in what they call extreme hobbyism. And I mentioned it at our last meeting during this webinar, that I started trying to come up with the best bicycle I could for myself because I had so much trouble walking. And that hobby crept up out of nowhere, and $20,000 or so later, I had bicycle parts thrown all over my apartment and a credit card that was glowing from overuse. And I thought, what the is going on? And then, of course, my next visit was about 4 months later. And that's when the doctor said, anything unusual going on? I said, well, what do you mean? Well, like extreme hobbies, sexual addiction. I said, what? What sexual addiction? I have bicycles in my living room. What are you talking about? So that's when I found out that I was actually experiencing some of those things that described in the pamphlet in small print.
I think you just identified another advantage of the current telemedicine model, which is that I think today, if someone gave you a medicine and you went away having more negative effects than positive, you wouldn't wait 3 or 4 months to speak to the doctor.
Exactly.
I think the doctor would have more availability to spend some time with you and fine tune that. There are 2 other lessons I took away from you today that I will remember. And this one is one of them, which is don't just keep doing blindly what seems not to be going well. And the other one was, he said, be proactive, and he said, be a Superman. And I picked up the idea of referring to myself as a Parkinson's challenger rather than someone being challenged by Parkinson's. It could be a tremendous, it has motivated me to do more than I've ever done in many positive ways. So I like that message. I think that, is there something, anything that either of you would like to add right now?
Yeah, I see Parkinson's over the years as a challenge and not a sentence. It will test everything you've got to deal with this thing and live with it. But it's an incredibly interesting challenge to stay ahead of it. And I just don't even want to imagine the type of person I would be if I didn't have this challenge to deal with every day, because it just keeps you motivated, it keeps you honest, and it just keeps you going. So, you know,
what an inspiring message.
Sometimes you have to get sick in order to feel good.
I get that. Dr. Isaacson, someone asked an interesting information question, and there might be a simple answer or there may not be. They talked about, are there any forms, checklists that would cover all the bases with severity ratings that are somewhat universally used in your industry? The person was referring to other physical problems and illnesses which might have standardized forms.
Yeah, so some of you may be aware that in Parkinson's, we tend to use a scale that's been validated, and we use it in trials. We also use it in the clinic. And it involves the tapping and the walking and the talking and pulling backwards, which you can't do virtually, and also asking about motor and non-motor symptoms that can affect daily lives. And the newer version of it that's available, and I think these are available online or maybe your doctors have them, actually we intended and validated that scale so that you can fill it out, not us. But you fill it out by reading the question and the answers, and it covers everything actually that we went over today, from constipation to sleep to tremor to off periods. It really covers all those things. So one thing is you can get a copy of that. You can download it. It's called the MDS UPDRS. If you Google it, you can find that. It's the parts 1 and 2 that are the important ones. Part 3 is the examination that I do, and part 4 is a way we can record when the medicines are on and when they're off, and when there's dyskinesia. So that's one way. There are different checklists available in different places, but most importantly, though, is to write down the 3 or 4 or 5 problems that bother you, and make them ones that are most important, that have to be sort of addressed or fixed at today's appointment, 1 and 2, and the other ones 3, 4, and 5. You can jot down other notes, but really you don't want anyone to fix 5 problems today, because these things will interact with each other. So think beforehand, which are the ones I really bother me every day, not the ones that were bad today and yesterday, but over the past week or 2 or 3, what do I want to try to fix today? And highlight those and make sure they're addressed.
Thank you. Alex, anything else you feel is left unsaid?
No, I think keeping a journal of what makes you feel good and what doesn't is a great way to approach your next visit to a doctor. And Dr. Isaacson alluded to that you have to come prepared to a meeting, whether it's in person or via internet. But you just keep an eye on what you eat, how it makes you feel, and it will greatly improve the communication between you and the doctor, and you'll feel better in the end because you'll figure out exactly what you should do, what you should eat, and how to go about it day by day.
Yeah. Awesome. I'd like, on behalf of all of us who are sitting here and PWP, to thank Dr. Isaacson and Alex. This was, for me, awesome, helpful, clarifying, inspiring, and I hope it was for you too. After the webinar tonight, I'd like to ask everybody to go to the website, PWP website, so you can sign in and fill out a survey so that we can serve you better in the future. I also want to invite you to go on the website to the spot where it says Ask the Docs on the Parkinson'sWellnessProject.org, Ask the Docs, and write any questions you want about your story, or you could even share a bit of your story. Drs. Rizak and Dr. Pallone will be responding to those questions. People have told us that the website has some great materials and that the contacts that are listed there have been very helpful to them. So we encourage you to check that out too. And last but not least, mark your calendars for upcoming webinars of PWP, September 13 and November 1st. And having shared that, I wish everybody to stay well, to keep learning to move and being moved to learn. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Whoever is still on, if you would like to send some questions in that you didn't get answered, please feel free to do so. That's fine, and we will get you those questions. If you have any questions now, you could fill them in, you could send them into the Q&A or the chat. And I think there was Phil, another question that we had. Somebody had written in and said, I'm losing a lot of weight. Why am I losing so much weight?
That's such an easy question to answer. In Parkinson's, some people gain weight, some people lose weight, and some people stay about the same weight. As you age, you tend to lose weight as well. People who continuously lose weight have to, of course, be evaluated by their medical doctor to make sure there's no other medical condition, from thyroid to other things that can cause it. And if nothing is found and you're still losing weight, look at the calories. I mean, weight, it has to do with calories in and calories out. And some people, in eating healthier, inadvertently lower their calories and lose weight. And sometimes you have to find some things like ice cream that has higher calories.
So it doesn't have to do with the medication.
Not the Parkinson's medicines. Some people who have a lot of dyskinesia might find they lose weight, but we should treat those dyskinesia.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Isaacson. I am so grateful for tonight. And thank you, Alex. And thank you, Dr. Phil. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. And thank you to all our attendees. And stay well, stay healthy. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.